Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. My name is jconsoli. I'm Executive Vice President of AssetView. I will serve as today's moderator. I will do part of the presentation. My primary function today is going to be to gather any questions that you may have. You can submit your questions by clicking on the circle that I'm pointing to right now, which will activate the chat function. We ask that you please direct your questions to myself. My name will appear as John C., and we will answer those questions. Some I may direct to Dave as we move through the presentation, my co-presenter David Cole, and most of the questions will be saved till the end of the presentation. The runtime of our presentation today will be approximately 30 minutes, and we have left ample time at the end of the presentation to address the questions that will be submitted. So at this time, I'd like to ask my co-presenter, David Cole, to take a moment and introduce himself. Dave?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Cole. I'm president of No Limits Software. Our focus at No Limits is on data center infrastructure management, DCIM software. We've been doing this as a company for about 5 years, but with my previous company and the team I have for about the last 15 years or so, actually before it was even called DCIM.
Thank you, Dave. And just by way of introduction, folks, again, my name is jconsoli. I'm Executive Vice President of AssetView. AssetView's role is we offer a data center asset management solution using passive RFID technology. We are an open technology designed to function as either a standalone solution or, in most cases, to integrate with other DCIM tools, and No Limits is a strategic partner of ours, and Dave has been kind enough to offer his expertise this afternoon for the presentation. So let's get down to today's agenda, or our agenda, as you can see. We're going to cover topics such as, do you have a map, in which Dave and myself will focus on what are you doing today? What's the present state of your data center infrastructure management strategy, your data center asset management strategy? A lion's share of what we'll speak about today will be Dave and myself sharing our C stories. As you heard, Dave has extensive experience in both the data center industry and in data center infrastructure management, as do I. As a matter of fact, when Dave and I first met, going back almost 7 years ago, the acronym DCIM didn't even exist yet. So we've got a plethora of experience in the space and in data centers. Both of us speak at industry events and conferences. We're both published in data center magazines and have interacted with many of you who are on the call today and many of your peers. And we're going to share the stories and experiences that we have come across. We'll focus today on a point that we call, does X mark the spot? Dave will speak to how long does it take on average for data center teams to locate assets in their data center, and what's the degree of accuracy that the existing data center map has. We're going to speak briefly about, is the crew about to mutiny, and the value of using tools to enhance morale, efficiency, and overall data center functionality. We're going to talk about going to the big guns, getting serious about data center infrastructure management, selecting the right tools and standing those tools up to use them effectively. And then lastly, in this presentation, one of our main goals is to give you, as participants in today's event, some tips and pointers that you can leave with today and as early as tomorrow morning start to make changes in your strategy, changes in your procedure, and things that can help you to get your ship on course in your data center portfolio. So Dave, with that, I'm going to hand the baton to you and ask you to take us through it, sir.
Great, John. I appreciate that. And like John said, we go back a ways, and we've been in a lot of data centers, talked to a lot of customers and potential customers, really about some of the problems that they're having. And it really has to kind of start back with, what are you doing today, right? If I see a lot of people that will go out and try to find solutions for their problems without really identifying the problem first. Really has to start with you. What problems are you running into? What solutions are you looking for? And then from there, find the solution that best meets your needs, that is best going to solve your problems. So one of the things we look at is how does your organization track assets? And that's a key part of really any data center management program. You have to know where the assets are, what assets you have, both for compliance reasons and really just for overall management reasons. Is your process and is your data efficient? You can use spreadsheets, and I've seen large companies use spreadsheets and homegrown tools to manage their data centers. If you have good processes, that's a good start. I've also seen customers that have spent millions of dollars on products and didn't put good processes around them and ended up not doing any better as a result. So we're not talking about magic bullets here. There's work involved. But with the right tools and the right processes, I think you can come a long way. When we're looking at tracking assets, when we're looking at managing in the data center, the data doesn't help us any if it isn't accurate. If people don't trust the data, then they're going to quit using the system, and that's really going to be a problem for you. And then the other thing is nobody should be professing that they have a product that will do absolutely everything that you need to do in the data center, right? So you need to be able to integrate systems together. I need to be able to take some data from my asset management system and feed it into another system and so on. And see, there we go. So kind of keeping with our treasure map theme, let's ask the first question: Can you even find your treasure? Right. So Digital Realty Trust did a survey a while back of data center managers, and what they found I thought was kind of shocking. 74% of data center managers couldn't find a particular server within minutes. Right. So somebody gives your help desk a call and they say, "Hey, server 123 is down. It needs to be. I need somebody to push the on button." Well, it would take them not minutes, sometimes not 4 hours, sometimes as much as a day to go out and find that server. Well, that's a problem, right? How can I manage if I can't even go out and physically find something? What was really troubling was this 20% number. 20% of data center managers said they couldn't necessarily find a server within a day, right? That really is pointing out to a pretty good-sized problem. Click. There we go. Next, is your treasure map accurate? So it doesn't help us to have a map. It doesn't help us to know that a particular server is in rack AA31, and I go out to rack AA31 and that server's not there, or that network device isn't there, or I thought this was going on and something else was happening. A lot of this problem goes back to manual entry of data. ITAM group that did a survey of their members, and they said 85 to 90% is a good accuracy rate for manually entered asset data. And while that sounds pretty good if I'm taking a test in an algebra class, if I've got 1,000 assets that are out there, 100 to 150 of those could have incorrect data in there. So that starts to break down the whole system if that data is not accurate. Next, what's in your treasure chest, right? Is it enough to know that I know where my treasure chest is, or do I need to know what's inside the treasure chest, right? What level of accuracy do I need? So I could say, yes, I have 4 treasure chests, and that may or may not buy me anything. Would it be more valuable to say, here's what's in my treasure chest. I've got pearls and gold rings and gold doubloons and so on, right? I can now put some value around those assets. So I think in the past it was good enough to say, I've got 38 servers. Well, now that's not good enough because I need to know the characteristics of those servers. What can those servers do for me? How many VMs can I put on one of those servers? What kind of memory do they have? What kind of processor speed do they have? So being able to get down to that level of accuracy is becoming more and more important all the time. So is DSIM the solution, right? Certainly is a solution that's been hyped. It's a very misunderstood term. Data center, that part's pretty well understood. Infrastructure, is that servers? Is that virtual machines? Is that facilities? That gets a little fuzzy. And then management. Management can be anything from, do I know where something is to can I control it, right? So DSIM, almost by definition, is a little bit fluid in what it actually does. And if you go to 10 different vendors, they may give you 10 different definitions of DSIM, right? But at the end of it, it's what you needed to do, and that's the really important thing to focus on, is that you need to figure out what you need a solution to do for you, and then find the right match for that. So a lot of times when I talk to customers, I really take almost the opposite approach. I give them some reasons why they may not be ready for DSIM, because DSIM is not one of those products that you go out and buy and turn on and say, I've got DSIM, right? So there's some reasons you may not be ready. So let's go through these and talk a little bit about how you can get ready for this. So the 5 biggest reasons that I see are, first of all, that you don't know what you need. And we'll go into each of these in some detail. You can't collect the data. This is a big one. We're going to focus a lot on number 2, because people need to understand there's some work involved, and choosing the right solutions and set of solutions can really help you in this area. Again, if you don't have processes in place, things start to break down without being able to do that. So we'll talk about processes. I'm just too busy. I'm too busy to get the solution chosen, too busy to get the solution installed and set up. And then finally, it's cost. And I put cost number 5 really for a reason. It may be the number one reason that people give for not buying a DSIM solution, but it really, of all of these, is probably the least important, because there is a true ROI on DSIM solutions, and we'll talk about that. So let's look at reason number 1. You don't know what information you need. Again, we can't go out and buy a solution to solve a problem when we don't know what the problem is. What information am I looking for in my data center to be able to help me do my job? So let's take a look at kind of this definition of DSIM. Again, it's kind of a fluid definition, but it certainly starts at the top here with asset management. I think all DSIM vendors would agree that asset management needs to be part of the solution. I need to know where my things are. What things do I have out there? All right, so that's a very key part of it. Real-time monitoring, I think, is a key part of the solution as well. And when we talk about real-time monitoring, we even get a little fuzzy there. Are we talking about the asset side? Are we talking about servers? Are we talking about network? Are we talking about facilities? What is it that we're going to monitor? Next big component is change management. This ties hand in hand with asset management. If I don't know when I've made a change, if I start with everything in the right place and then start moving things around and I'm not managing the change, I'm going to have problems knowing where things are again. Right? I'm right back to where I started. So a key component of DSIM is this change management. Number 4, data center visualization. I want to know where things are in the data center, and if I can visualize that, that's certainly going to make it easier. Whether it's a top-down view of my data center or a rack elevation view of what things are in my rack and where they're located, and so on. This visualization really helps me get a handle on what's going on. Next is capacity planning, particularly if I'm doing real-time monitoring. I want to take that data that I have and be able to do something with it. The data by itself is maybe not helpful without being able to make that data actionable, where I can turn around and do something with that data, right? I need useful, actionable data. And then the 6th component is one that may or may not be in a DSIM solution, but some have it, some don't, and that's workflow. And this is being able to manage tasks and my process for installing new servers or decommissioning a piece of network gear and so on, right? So we started with DSIM, with kind of a fuzzy little definition. Now we've drilled into this a little bit more, and it starts getting a little bit cloudier because we've got more components. which may or may not be there for a DSIM solution. And now let's make it even cloudier, because I can't just look at asset management. What does asset management entail? Is that auto discovery of assets out there? Am I bulk loading in from some spreadsheets? Am I using RFID to be able to keep track of where things are and have an RFID system really help me pinpoint where this equipment is, right? Or am I using barcodes? Am I using something else? Same thing with real-time monitoring. What protocols am I going to use to go out and talk to devices? Do I need to talk to wireless devices? Do I need to be alerted when I have problems? Do I need to be able to tie into an existing VMS system? So you start to see how this gets more and more complicated as I go through this. Change management. Do I need to tie into a CMDB, a change management database? Do I need to automate this change management? Data center visualization. Do I need two-dimensional, three-dimensional? Do I need to start with AutoCAD drawings or Visio? Do I need a mobile interface? Again, more and more complication as we go through. Capacity planning, starting to look at some of the energy efficiency metrics, PUE, DCIE, corporate average data center efficiency. Do I need to tie into a CFD model, right? More and more and more as we go through, right? And then if it wasn't confusing enough, let's start looking at the relationships between these functions, right? So certainly asset management and change management have to go together. We talked about that. But real-time monitoring feeds into capacity planning. Asset management may tie into workflow as I'm adding new equipment or decommissioning. And you start to see all these different relationships that form between these different functional areas. Right, starts to look a little bit like a big plate of spaghetti by the time we're done. And now, if I'm going out, if I'm you, and I'm going out to pick a DSIM solution or a set of solutions, I try not to think of DSIM as just a thing. It is a solution that may have various components. We're going to talk about that a little bit later today. So when I look at all this, how do I choose? I mean, because this gets really, really messy. So let's try to clear up some of the confusion. Let's get rid of these relationships and these details. In fact, let's get rid of all of this stuff as well. What DSIM really comes down to is information, right? Information that you can use to manage your data center. So the very first thing you have to do when you're looking for really any solution in the data center is determine what information it is that you need to be able to do your job. Right? And here's the secret. Here's the secret that probably DSIM vendors don't want you to know. Maybe no one wants you to know, right? DSIM's not going to help you if it doesn't provide the information that you need. I can go buy a package that does 1,000 functions. And if I don't use any of those functions, that package hasn't helped me any, right? It's all about the information that you need. So you have to figure out what that information is. So here's reason number 2. You're not prepared for the work required for the initial data collection. And again, this is a biggie. This is really, really a big deal because people think, hey, I'm going to deploy this solution and 15 minutes later I'm up, I'm managing my data center. I've worked with various DSIM solutions. I can tell you horror stories of 2 and 2.5, 3 years of data collection before the first report came out of the system. Millions of dollars before we got any actionable data out of that system, right? So you have to be prepared for this initial data collection. And here's one of the problems with this initial data collection. It's the manual collection, right? Manual collection has multiple issues with that. So let's just, in my example here, let's choose, let's say I have 200 racks with, say, 20 assets per rack. Right? So I have 4,000 assets that I'm trying to keep track of out there. This initial data collection, if I were to go out to a third-party company and say, hey, come in here and collect readily available data. So readily available data, we're looking at manufacturer, model, the name, its location, and a serial number, right? Stuff that I can get without logging onto the system, actually without even touching the system. Typical rate for that would be about $15 per asset to collect that data and get it into a system. So you're looking at about $60,000 for data collection. Or if you do it yourself, that might be 20 man weeks of work. Right? That's a big deal. Who has 20 man weeks available, right? That hey, I wasn't doing anything the next 4 or 5 months. I'll go collect that data, right? Or here's $60,000. I'm perfectly fine parting with. I'll pay somebody to go do that. You have to be aware of this when you're manually collecting data, that there's a lot of work involved. Now, how accurate is that data? We talked about this 10 to 15% error rate for manually entered data. So that means out of my 4,000 assets, that 400 to 600 of those are going to have incorrect data. Now, maybe it's just an incorrect IP address or a serial number or a location. And while that doesn't seem like a big deal, if I want to go find that server and I think it's in rack AA31 and I go there and it's not there, where is it, right? How do I find that? Even though it's a simple thing, I put it into the wrong rack location, not being able to find that could cost me many, many hours to go out and find that. In the meantime, that system may be down. Third thing on this list is tracking changes. Change in the data center is a big, big deal. I teach a data center management class, and one of the things we focus on a lot is change. And while we don't have an exact number for it, it's estimated as high as 80% of outages in the data center are due to a change we made, right? I can't get to the server anymore. Why is that? Well, because someone unplugged the network cable, plugged it into a different port, and that port doesn't work, or that network configuration doesn't work for me anymore. Now I've got a system that's down. I need to get it back up again, right? I want high availability. About 80% of our mean time to repair is trying to find change, right? Trying to find out what it was that changed that caused this not to work anymore. So you can see how important change is to keep track of that. And manual change tracking doesn't track any unauthorized changes. So if I go through a change process, which I should do, and say, I'm going to move this network cable from this port to this port, I can go to the change log and look and see what's going on. If, however, someone just unplugs that and plugs it into another spot, guess what? I don't know what that change is. Right? So we need to be able to track changes. And then the fourth part is data audits. Right? So I've got all these compliance issues with being able to, that I can sign off that, yep, we have 400 servers or 8,000 servers. How do I know that? I run into a similar cost and effort as my initial data collection. So I know I spent a lot of time on this one slide, but it's really important for you to understand that this manual collection of asset data can cause us some problems. Let's look at reason number 3 we might not be ready for desale. I don't have processes in place to manage change in the data center. All right, so I'm keeping with our nautical theme here. If our data center never changed, we'd be sailing on smooth seas, right? We build a new data center. We've got a great design. We put every piece of equipment where it can be used most effectively. We go through an extensive commissioning process, make sure everything's working as designed, everything's well documented. We're all cool. Everything's great, right? However, smooth sails never made a skillful sailor. The problem is that our data center isn't static. Every year, hundreds or thousands of changes are made. We add equipment, we decommission equipment, we move equipment. We move network cables around. We add new network connection. Equipment breaks. Equipment is upgraded. Data center is anything but static. So being able to manage those rough seas is what we're talking about here today. Here's reason number 4. We're too busy with our current projects to invest the time needed to choose and implement a DSIM solution. So we've already talked about, the time and money to do this initial data collection. But even to go and choose a solution to work with you in the data center and going and talking to vendors and maybe doing a proof of concept, which I typically recommend, that's a lot of work. And who has that time, right? Maybe we've just got a couple other things that are going on, and we're a little too busy to choose this solution. And you don't want to go out and just choose the first one you find. You really want to do your homework on this. Finally, reason number 5, can't justify the cost of the solution to your boss, right? You want to spend how much on this? Shiver me timbers, right? I mean, it's a lot of money for some of these systems. So you have to be able to justify that cost. So let's talk about how maybe we can get ready for this, right? So you don't want to go in here, blind. You really want to be prepared for what's going on. So Here's these 5 reasons, and let's talk about how we can get around these. First of all, you don't know what you need. Right? Let's talk about that. I think you do know what information you need. What data does your boss request on a regular basis? You have monthly reports. Look at your last outage. What would have helped you prevent that outage? Maybe knowing power usage, maybe some alerts that said we were running out of power, temperature reading, those kind of things. What would make it easier to provision new equipment? Knowing that I have a visual view of the data center, rack elevations, knowing what's in each rack, power and cooling at the rack level. So you start putting together a list of the information that's important for you on a regular basis, particularly stuff that you're manually collecting today. Man, you'd like to automate that if you could. So that's how we get started with what information you need. Got to be first step. Next, can't collect the data. Well, we talked about one of the big problems being this manual data collection. So let's automate this as much as possible. So one of the things that we do in our DSIM solution and we work for years and years on this, is to put in auto discovery capabilities. Allows you to provide this data quickly, more detailed, comprehensive data about the assets. So instead of saying I've got a server out there, we can tell you what the processor is, how much memory is it using, what software is installed, what virtual machines are running on that, right? So it's important to do that. Second part, and John's going to address this in a couple of minutes, is RFID. It's really, really important to locate this asset, right? So tying those two together, RFID and auto discovery, eliminates almost all of the manual data collection process. Right? And it buys us some other benefits going forward. Our data accuracy increases. Because if I go to the server and say, tell me about yourself, and it gives me the information, that's pretty good information. Better than someone going, yeah, that looks like it's a HP server, but I can't see the label on it, so I think that's what the serial number is. Right? So much better accuracy and location accuracy because of the RFID, right? So the combination of those two tied together really buys you a lot. Tracking changes, if I can auto-discover, I can get snapshots. I can tell you when changes happen. I can tell you when equipment is moved, and that's going to reduce this mean time to repair and increase our overall availability. And finally, data center audits. These are ongoing, right? By using these tools, the audits are happening all the time. I don't have to do a big end-of-year audit. We do a lot of work with one company it's a large telecommunications company. They spend $500,000 a year on server audits and $10,000 a week auditing servers. If you could just take that away and have these ongoing audits, you'd pay for that DSIM solution first year, not a problem. So, next thing, no processes in place. What we found is most people have processes in place, but they're maybe not formalized as much as they would like them to be. So if I put together a process, say for installing a new server that says I need to choose a location, plan the power, plan the network, all those kind of things, and I could build out, with a little drag and drop capability, build out the process for installing that server. Have a system that automatically tracks through, sees what the steps are, automates the next step, and alerts the person when their task is due. That's going to really solidify your processes. It's going to make sure that your processes are followed. And because of that, it's going to improve your processes. If you don't have processes in place, what a great way to start building your processes. Too busy. I get that, right? We're all very busy, but a lot of what we're doing is we're being busy in the wrong way. So about 20% of a typical data center manager's day is spent avoiding the icebergs, right? Trying to prevent problems, right? We're sailing our ship. We don't want to hit the iceberg. So about 20% of our day is doing that. Unfortunately, we're kind of misplacing where we put that time. So of that 20%. About 18% of it's doing incident management, and about 2% doing problem management. So let's just real quickly define those. Incident management is reacting to problems. Hey, this server is down, or this system's down, or that kind of problem, right? Problem management is about identifying the underlying problems and looking at root cause, trend analysis, that kind of thing, to prevent them from happening in the future. right? So we're trying to get rid of this incident management by really focusing more on problem management, and DSIM can help you do that. Okay, slide, talk to me. There we go. And then finally, the cost. And the reason I put cost last is I really don't think this should be the issue that people think about. So reducing energy costs. Gartner says it's likely that DSIM will pay for itself in 2 years, just given its potential to reduce energy and other operational costs. And I'll go right out and say it to the world that DSIM doesn't save any energy. Right? Now, that seems a little different than what I just said here. What DSIM does is give you the information that you can use to reduce your energy usage, right? Things like power usage and temperatures and things like that, right? Without this information, you're really making changes blind. Minimize downtime. 91% of U.S. data centers had unplanned outages in the past 2 years. Those data centers that were not using a DSIM solution, the average was 107 minutes at an average cost of $845,000. They estimated the cost of about $7,900 a minute, right? Systems with data centers with a DSIM solution, the average downtime was 43 minutes at an average cost of $340,000. So that's, if you can do the math like I can, that's $505,000 right there in potential savings with DSIM by just having more visualization into the data center. The other thing, and I'm going to turn it over to John here, is the improved manageability. Right, so trying to get away from the costs of the data center audits and having to do a big data center audit, going through big data center audit process, getting rid of some of the spreadsheets and homegrown systems, improving capacity planning. These are all things that you can do with a DSIM solution. And then I'm going to turn it to John for to kind of take over from here to talk a little bit about how other systems can play into DSIM to really complete the picture. So, John, all yours.
Thank you, Dave. Great job. So, accuracy and efficiency. Let me talk for a minute about why my partners and myself created AssetView. As I mentioned at the onset of the presentation, I had spent about 6 or 7 years in the DSIM space, as a matter of fact, in data center monitoring before it was called DSIM, and worked with some companies and very successfully sold and worked on the implementation of DSIM in the space. Now, a challenge that we ran into and a behavior that we ran into and a frustration that I believe many of you share, I'm sure there are some of you who have invested in a DSIM tool and haven't been able to stand it up, roll it out, and get it working to meet your requirements. And the commonality that the teams that I was a part of found was that item number 2 that Dave focused on. Nobody anticipated the daunting task of collecting the data and tracking the data. And the DSIM industry in its early evolution, and even today, overlooked asset management and tracking where the things are because it's just not sexy. The DSIM market primarily focuses on power management, cooling management, control, and energy savings based upon improving PUE. Asset management in the data center doesn't speak to any of that, but asset management is key because all of us who work in the data center business need to know where our stuff is. The need to know accurately and efficiently is driven by several things, and I've got them listed on the slide here. The need for fiscal audits, the amount of money that we spend in the data center, both on the operating side and capital side, huge dollars. The evolving need to be in compliance with both internal requirements as well as external compliance entities such as Sarbanes-Oxley and HIPAA. Service and maintenance events. As Dave said before, in response to a downing event or even for ongoing service and maintenance, there's a daily need in data centers to locate very quickly, very efficiently where IT equipment is and where the infrastructure exists on the white space. There are also other events like decommissioning at the end of life. A part of service and maintenance also creates state change where devices are moving from one state to another. The state from being in storage to actually being provisioned and deployed, and then moving out of the data center space maybe for an RMA event. And then with the ever-growing co-location and managed services data center space, or even in consolidation, we've seen a huge growth in migration, things moving from one data center to another. And few things scream of how poorly, as a group, we do with maintaining change management and location of our physical assets. Few things give better evidence of that than a migration. If you've ever been part of a team, as I have, where a data center was being relocated or a large part of a data center was being moved from one space to another, the amount of things left behind after everything that you have inventoried is accounted for. There are still things glowing in the data center, and then there comes that point where somebody has to cross their fingers and close their eyes and hit an off switch and wait to hear if anybody screams. So it was just based out of a business need for enhanced accuracy and efficiency that we created the tool that we today call AssetView. There's another thing that we focus on, and I am a student of behavior, and because as a sales and marketing professional, understanding the behavior of groups is key to the success of any business plan from the sales and marketing aspect. So as I travel and speak to those of you who are with us today and with all of our peers at industry events, or when we come in and do sales or marketing calls, or even I'm fortunate enough after 30 years in the industry to have developed a lot of friendships with some senior people in the industry. And if you're on the call today and can hear the sound of my voice, then I could almost guarantee that you're in a situation where you're called every day to do more with less. You've got less staff, your budget's being cut, and the amount of responsibility that you and your team have grows. There's also very many of you who are here with us today listening in on this that are not doing the job that you signed up for. Just think about when you went to work or accepted the position that you're in today. Does the job description that you accepted and the roles and responsibilities you accepted, how does that map to what you're doing today? It's probably different. You're probably doing a lot more than you originally did and doing things that are different. Morale is overall pretty low, right? We've come through a pretty sore spot in the nation's economy. There's been a lot of cutbacks, both reduction in force and budget-wise, and having to do an inventory and having to do an audit doesn't do anything to add to morale. So we've got a solution by adding automation to data collection and data asset management that makes the process much more efficient, much speedier, much easier to do. Dave threw out a number before for 4,000 assets, taking about 20 man-weeks to manually inventory. With a level of automation and by applying passive RFID technology, we routinely have clients that inventory and audit 4,000 assets in a matter of hours. It's a significant reduction in time savings. So passive RFID technology, let's talk about that for a moment. It's the technology that AssetView uses to both collect data and to help our clients maintain track changes and audits in data centers. But originally what we focused on in our tool was filling a space by creating a database that was focused solely on the collection and management of asset data for data center environments. We knew that we wanted to automate the process, so we evaluated, as we encourage you to, several methods, and we boiled it down to three. Three automated methods for data collection that we focused on were, number one, barcode, number two, active RFID, and number three, passive RFID. Barcode seemed like a natural solution to us. We were very familiar with it, as everyone is. The reason that we moved away from barcode very quickly is, just like all of us on the call today, we had the unfortunate experience of in a retail environment, maybe at your local Stop and Shop, maybe at Home Depot, of running into the challenges of trying to use barcode for automated self-checkout. Barcode is a line-of-sight system, and trying to get that red horizontal line to line up with the bars can be frustrating and time-consuming. So we found that barcode was better than crawling around on our hands and knees using a microscope and a flashlight. Well, not a microscope, a magnifying glass and a flashlight to record things onto a clipboard, but quite frankly, not a whole lot better. Moving to RFID, we first evaluated active RFID, and active RFID, very effective. We liked it. One of the reasons that our team moved away from it and disqualified it really was cost. Cost of acquisition, the tags are quite expensive. There's a maintenance cost associated with active RFID because the tags, because active tags emit a signal, there needs to be a battery on board. And those batteries, number one, cost money. Number two, create a maintenance event. And number three, limit or dictate the size of the tag. There needs to be room for a battery. So that really drives the size of the tag. Passive RFID, significantly less expensive. We found that there's a plethora of tags available on the market, some of which are what we call nano tags, which allow us to apply RFID tagging down to the blade level in blade server chassis. So very much like a ship's cannon, passive RFID, surprisingly simple. There's no hurdles to overcome because just about everyone is familiar and comfortable with passive RFID, and we found it to be amazingly effective. So at the onset of the presentation, as we start to wind down, we promised you some takeaways and action items. So based upon what Dave has shared today, we encourage you this afternoon, tomorrow, sometime before the end of the week, take the notes that we hope that you're jotting down some things today. Create a map, create a plan of action. Get your crew on board. Managers, sit down with your team. If you're a team member, swim upstream and get some time with your management and talk to them about the challenges that you face in the data center on a daily basis and maybe a vision of why you would want to investigate automating some of the data collection process. Research your route. You know, as Dave said before, we've both been in the industry for longer than either one of us can believe, or longer than either one of us like to admit to each other or to you, 25, 30 years. We take almost a counterintuitive approach, the opposite of what you might expect for people who have a product to sell. We're both business owners, and we both really like when people buy our product, but we don't want you to buy our product if it's not the right tool for your data center, and we mean that. So we encourage you to do your research. We also offer our services free of charge, not on a consultancy basis, but just to share information, tell you our stories, and point you in the right direction. So at the end of the presentation, we will share our contact information. If you'd like to learn more about what AssetView does and about what No Limits does, great. Let's make no bones about it. That's why we're here today. But Dave and I really do believe, and the reason that we agreed to collaborate on this presentation, our philosophy, and really why we chose this nautical theme, this pirate theme, is we really believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. As we become better together and collectively in the data center industry, become more educated, start to adapt and use better technologies, it creates more opportunity for all of us. So please research your route. And then the most important thing is set sail, get started. Little changes, baby steps, the little things that you can do based upon what we shared with you today, the sooner you can implement them, the better. So that concludes the presentation part. We're right on time at 2:45, and right now you have sent some questions in, so we're going to get to those questions now. Dave, the first question that came in from one of our participants, I'm going to flip to you. The question is, what are you using for auto discovery? And somebody else sent in a question, what does No Limits do? So Dave, I'm going to walk that over to you.
Well, good. I appreciate that. So we're a data center infrastructure management provider. So we have a decent product called RAMP, and it really is. It will manage everything in the data center from the virtual machine all the way up to the IT equipment, network equipment, all the way up to facilities, so rack PDUs, UPSs, all the way up to the utility. So kind of a one-stop, should be able to see everything under single pane of glass. I get tired of that analogy, but really, one tool that can help you visualize everything. So auto discovery, great question. We get that a lot, and happy to go into detail on that. But we use a lot of different protocols. We spent about 4 years on our auto discovery tools, so we will use everything from the traditional SNMP and Modbus and so on. But then when we get down to the server level, we're also looking at IPMI and all of the IPMI variants. So HP uses high-low, and Dell has iDRAC, and so on. So we use all of those different protocols, WMI, WBEM, SSH. We use a lot of different protocols. You have full control over where do I want to do the discovery, what IP addresses, and so on, and also what protocols and credentials you want to use to be able to do that. So we don't take any of that control out of your hands. In fact, it's in the right place. It should be in your hands to do that.
Thank you, Dave. The next question that came in is AssetView RFID exclusive to No Limits software? And the answer is no. We are not exclusively partnered with No Limits, nor is AssetView or RFID the only data collection method that No Limits uses. We have a similar approach, and Dave, I'll ask you just to chime in and indicate your concurrence here that, again, part of our philosophy about the marketplace is an open approach of interoperability, and as you covered early in the presentation, we both really support the selection of a DSIM tool that has the capability to share information with other monitoring tools and other platforms, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I'm really, in fact, I'm very opposed to just proprietary solutions, and you have to buy all of this hardware and all of these pieces to make this thing work. And that's one of the reasons I like working with John and the team over at AssetView is we have similar approaches in that it's an open solution. And in fact, we've used our DSIM solution with other DSIM solutions to provide some data that they maybe didn't have. So. And I think that approach is the way the industry is starting to go, and I think that's a good sign.
Great. And the other question that I will address is, can you talk about, again, clarify the difference between passive RFID and active RFID? The primary difference between passive and active is the behavior of the tags themselves. In an active RFID solution, the RFID tag sends a signal, it generates a signal, it pings. In a passive RFID solution, the tag needs to be energized, and RFID, radio frequency identification, the tag itself doesn't emit a signal. It needs to be energized by a reader, and then once it's energized and activated, the information from the tag can be collected into the reading device. So that is the primary difference there. Again, impact of those differences, there is a significant cost difference between the two, and also with our passive tags, we found, although the active tags are getting smaller, that's for sure, than they were even a year ago. Passive still provides us the ability to become more granular in the data center space and tag things. We have many of our clients that are affixing RFID tags onto the individual blades in blade server chassis. So with that, Dave, I'll ask you, we're running down to the end of our time. Any closing comments for the folks before we wrap this up?
On our side, I think the key thing that you hit at the end, John, when you were talking about the takeaways, is get the process going. It may take you a little while to put together a full solution. You really need to think this out, and start with making that map, but start doing it today or tomorrow. What holes do you have and how you're managing, and then start putting together solutions, start looking for solutions that can fill some of those gaps in knowledge. And I think you're going to find you end up with more time on your hands, more accurate data, really just a little bit nicer coming in on Monday morning, kind of having a feel for where things are going, as opposed to, well, when is it going to hit the fan, right?
Yep. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. And as we wrap this up, I want to thank everybody for their time today. Both No Limits and Asset View do have WebEx versions of our software solutions that we can demonstrate for you remotely. So if anyone listening would be interested in an online, no obligations demonstration of either the No Limits ramp product or Asset View's ABI Asset View inventory, please contact us at the contact information that's on the screen today. So with that, I'd like to thank my co-presenter, Dave Cole, for doing an outstanding job today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. We hope you found this time valuable, and we certainly do appreciate you. And we'll see you out there at the upcoming conferences and meetings that are associated with springtime in the data center industry. Thanks, and have a great day.